Good evening. It is 6:34 on March 11th, 2026. I'm Carl Hummel, the Vice Chair. I'll call the meeting to order. Could the other members please identify themselves?
Karen Mead.
Joanne Lamoth.
And we expect Tom Maroli to show up in a couple of minutes. Can I have someone move to accept? Oh, sorry. This meeting is being conducted according to the online stuff that we do. All votes will be roll call votes. Also with us, we have Ann Mazar from the Land Use Committee and our Select Board Liaison, Jason Cooter. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the February 11th minutes.
I motion to accept the February 11th minutes, please.
I'll second.
Joanne moved and Karen seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
Okay, great. All in favor? Carl Hummel, yes. Aye.
Karen Mead, aye.
Joanne Lamoth, aye.
Great. Okay. Motion passes. Now we can just shoot the breeze until Tom gets here. Jason, any gossip in town? You want to share on something that will show up on YouTube?
I'm not much of a gossip guy. I think what's going on in town right now is budgets, and then it'll be town meeting. And I think the other thing going on is our town administrator is expecting a baby soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is he on paternity leave yet, or does that happen
Not
when
yet.
he goes to the hospital?
Yeah, we're waiting for the call.
Yeah,
And did I see that you have somebody interested in joining?
Yes, he sent a letter. One of the things we'll do, we can actually talk about that. Michael Byrne. What I would say is that if he isn't here tonight, then Tom or I will reach out to him and ask him to attend the next meeting, and then we can talk with him about it and say, do you really want to spend 1 or 2 evenings a month arguing about bylaw language?
Karen and Joanne, have you heard of the online newspaper, the Mendon Commons?
I
Yep.
have. I love it.
Oh, good. So you subscribe then?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
It comes out with a new article every couple of weeks,
Yeah.
about once a week.
One just popped up in my email tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Tell your friends, because the more people on it, the more, information we'll have and knowing what's happening in town and whatnot.
I put it on the Mendon Mass Bulletin Board on Facebook, so I'm sure they're getting a lot.
Thank you.
I will be putting something, the PowerPoint deck, when we decide to pick a date for rescheduling the noise ordinance thing.
I'll be putting something on it about the mock signing happening.
Yep. It's a nice, more centralized place to tell people things than the Facebook group, because
Correct.
Facebook has its own idea about what it's going to give people.
They actually post their articles on the Mendon Mass Bulletin Board after they're published through email.
And here is Tom, our chair, arriving.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I
Hi.
opened the meeting, gave the announcement, we approved the minutes, and I noted that we got a letter from Michael Byrne, but now you're here, we can take it away and probably start with Ann.
All right, perfect. The meeting's been open. Correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I started the meeting and gave we're doing this online, everything's a roll call.
Perfect. Well, thank you for doing that. All right. And Anne, have you started yet? No?
Not to, I mean, a little bit with some of the people, but not everybody. Do you want me to explain the changes?
So if you could just go through the changes that you're asking us to approve of for the spring meeting.
Well, I don't know if you want to put it up, but overall, most of the changes are made because
There it
this
is.
bylaw was written, I guess, in 1994, and there was no land bank and there was no Community Preservation Act passed. So a lot of it's just outdated. And then the other changes are because we have reports and documents that we didn't have then, such as the Community Preservation Plan, the Master Plan, the Housing Production Plan. And so that's really where I think all the changes are from, pretty much. I mean, we can kind of go through each one if you want.
You- the substantive one is here. If there are specific land purchases, it's a warrant article.
Right, because you have to do that anyways.
Right.
And they
Is
had
that-
this whole process, and they were collecting money every year, and we don't need to do that because we have the CPA and
CPC, yeah. Does this
or
apply also to buying a conservation restriction?
yeah, they say it's in different ways of buying or preserving land. Because I mean, it's also like if we're buying land for the school, CPA funds couldn't be used, but that's why it would go to a town meeting because we would need funds or, to do that. And CPA always has to be voted at town meeting also, if anything's spent on a project like that.
Okay.
I mean, it makes sense to me. Does anyone from the committee have any additional, any questions about it?
Nope.
Like the changes?
Nope.
I mean,
Did you
I
bring
am
these to
comfortable
legal
with-
yet, Anne?
No,
Or
I mean,
then
no.
these types of things should just fly through if they're just basic updates to be in line with current law.
Mhm.
Can I ask a question though? So when legal used to review the entire warrant prior to town meeting, is that?
Yeah, they still do that. They definitely do that.
Okay. So if we're gonna,
But you don't want to surprise them with something that they have to do a lot of work on, right? So you want to
makes sense.
get some of that stuff in early, and if it does require more work, then they can do that. And if not, then it's not a big deal. But yeah, then they review the final warrant for language, and then after everything's approved, it goes to the Attorney General, and they approve it all for language. And if all that goes well, then the law becomes law.
So after this meeting, if there's not any changes, then I'll probably send this to Jeremy and then he could send it to town council.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And since he's
And you'll
imminently
wanna
departing,
see-
send it
Yeah,
to.
The select board also.
Yeah. Well, you want to CC the select board and Jen on anything that you're sending to Jeremy over the next kind of couple of weeks here.
Okay, so is Jen
we'll take
now
care of
his assistant?
She'll be the acting town administrator while he's gone. And
Got it.
so, during this transition period, you just want to make sure she's aware.
Got it.
And then if anything, hopefully if you hit the select board as well, then, if there's anything that requires timeliness, that hopefully won't fall through the cracks because it'll hit one of the select board as well.
Okay. So any questions
All right,
or?
I've got nothing, and it seems like the committee has nothing either. So I'd be willing to accept a motion to approve the changes from the land use committee and throw the committee support behind this for the spring meeting.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Well,
State your
little,
name.
little discussion first. We're not
Okay.
actually approving because we're not in the loop for that because it's their bylaw. We're saying we've reviewed it and we're recommending that the town adopt it.
Yeah, no, I'm saying approving of their changes and throwing the committee's weight behind it for the town meeting.
Yep.
That's what I said.
Yep. Okay. Carl Hummel, yes. Aye.
Karen Mead, aye.
Joanne Lamoth, aye.
Tom Morelli, aye. All right. Thank you, Ann.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Aye.
Bye.
I figured next, if Carl, if you want to talk about the noise bylaw.
Well, we need to go back and pick a date that doesn't conflict with finance committee and select board meetings. And then we can put something in the Facebook group that goes on the town website. Ellen Angro, I'd talk to her about that. And we get it in the new newsletter, the Mendon online newspaper thing that's going. So do we want to schedule this for 2 weeks from tonight?
Well, I just want to know, are we, like, we have to submit the language. We have to submit the language for the.
You need to submit the rough structure for the warrant. Yeah, it doesn't. The exact language doesn't need to. Exact motion language doesn't need to be in there until.
But
right. We will get a placeholder saying we want to have the noise bylaw. I've got a first preliminary draft, and then that's a good starting place. And then the warrant language wouldn't need to change, but the actual draft will in the next couple of months.
So wait, 2 weeks from tonight, are we sure there's no select board meeting or finance committee meeting?
There is no finance committee meeting scheduled. Now,
sure
Mike and the select
no
board may come in and do one, but then we'd have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, our next meeting is the 18th, which is next Wednesday.
Next week.
Yeah, we meet the first and the third Wednesday of every month, and we're not doing. We're done with the finance meetings for the moment.
Do Thursdays conflict with any?
I can't do the 25th, so you guys can meet, but I won't be able to make it. It's conflicting with the schedule.
25th, I have a hard stop that day, so I would prefer to do a different day for this. What about the 26th? Is that conflict with anything?
Conservation Commission.
Conservation.
Okay, Concom. What about the 24th?
24th has nothing, as I can see right now.
Would everybody be able to do the 24th?
Yep, I can do the 24th.
Me
We
too.
want 6 p.m. and we could try to take the upstairs room.
You can go online right now and reserve the upstairs room, and Ellen will put a reserve on it tomorrow right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, all
Without
you have
any-
to do is put the room in the meeting invite, and then she gets a approval thing, and then she can.
Yep.
At 6 p.m., right?
Yep.
Yeah.
When that's been booked, I will create a agenda for that meeting, and then we can start publishing it and advertising it.
Perfect.
So we've already reviewed the PowerPoint deck, so I don't have anything new there. What I'm sharing now is the draft I whipped up from liberally cutting and pasting from Falmouth, Hopkinton, Uxbridge, a couple other places. So basically, I'm sharing it now. It starts with section 1 purpose, which is why we are looking to have the bylaw. Then definitions, and the definitions give the explanation for the key words that are in the follow-on. Section 3 I'll skip over right now. Section 4 is violations and penalties. And this is what Chief Kersey, I forget the name of the health agent. Jason, do you remember her name?
Yeah, thanks for throwing me under the bus. No, I'm terrible with names.
Okay, well, me too.
I can look it up though.
Yeah, she did this, and so looking at other parts of our Mendon bylaws, the language is verbal warning for the first violation, citation for $100, second violation, third is 300. Now, one of the interesting questions I'll want to have feedback from is, Colleen, yeah, is it 365 days from the first violation in the year or from the preceding violation? And, I'm scratching my head. For some things, it makes sense one way or the other, but we'll get the expert. And then it specifically talks about Mass General Law 40, and then the 21D is the phrase that they use. Exemptions is the other thing that we've all worked out, and it's in the slide deck. Emergency vehicles, noises created while people are fixing emergencies, when they're fixing bridges, if somebody's house alarm is going off. One of the things that I want to explicitly get in here, even though it's covered by reference, farm equipment is defined by the right to state law and our right to farm bylaw. So that's specifically excluded from noises. And then, Jason, you should look at section F here, because this is the one that you were pushing for. Activities granted a one-time permit by the select board that specifically request an exemption from this bylaw. The select board may, at their discretion, require a butter notification for the public meeting at which the application will be considered. So if the Vandervalk Winery or the circus or the drive-in want to have a loud concert, they'd be able to get an exemption from it. Or 23 Cape Road needs to make loud noises at 6 a.m. again.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to add to the checklist of activities. The whole this is later on, but the policies that come and either set the responsibility for the operational stuff, on the health agent or between the health and the police department. We're gonna have to figure out how those like routing slips of checklists will get passed around.
Has a very good procedure document, but that's something that the bylaw doesn't need to reference that. It's just there, and that's where you would describe how that determination is made, instructions on how frequently they calibrate, stuff like that. Then the other two exemptions, non-commercial speech guaranteed, and Clause H is a catch-all that says if somebody's allowed to do something by state or federal law or regulations or by another Mendon bylaw or regulation, they get to keep doing it. So this is the part where it doesn't override the existing nuisance dog bylaw or the existing rooster regulation. Those still stay in force. This bylaw isn't going to supersede them. And then the last one is severability, is the standard lawyer boilerplate. Section 3, standards. This is the one where we need to get feedback from people saying, okay, what time do you want noises to not be starting? You want it to be at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 6 a.m.? What do you feel should be done differently on the weekends? So there's a whole bunch of different ways. This is not a consistent section. It's got basically two different ways of slicing it. And so after we get input and we as a committee and think about something, what I believe we would end up doing is we'd say we want to have the GBRC recommends the following, and then the select board would get to weigh in and say whether they want to override it or not based on what they've been hearing, in addition to the public meeting we have. Jason, do you think that's a good plan?
I lost my window there for a sec. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think the only thing is during the public meetings the thing I'm worried about is, and this might just be a worry on my part, but is people nitpicking over the exact hours. And you might want to have just some references to the hours around us for people to understand what the standards are in this space. Yeah, I don't know. I could just see that coming up as, some people maybe believe that on weekends it should be 9 a.m. or something, or some towns start at 12 or that sort of thing. It's
Yes,
just about the public meeting itself so that you can guide the conversation, so it doesn't rat hole.
right. Well, I'm expecting that is what a lot of the discussion is going to be. The first thing that I will be talking about, because it's a straight one or the other, is do we want to have a set decibel threshold, or do we want to have 5 decibels over ambient, over background noise? And that's I don't know.
Is there a way to demonstrate that, like with a
Um, I
diagram or something, like what that looks like what's 5 decibels over ambient noise? So like I'm at a concert and it's already at 100 decibels. Is that me yelling over top of those types of examples, where somebody might be able to visualize what the difference there looks like? I mean, for me, I want to do a relative thing, but
Yep.
some people might not understand what that really
Okay.
means.
I think what that means is I'd ask Colleen and Chief Kersey if
Yeah.
they can give an explanation of that, because they're the ones who would be monitoring, supervising the officers who'd be going out on site.
Right, because
So-
a loud radio, on Route 16 is different than a loud radio, on Blackstone Street. So,
Because Route 16 has traffic noise, yeah,
right.
even in
right.
the middle of the night.
Well, but the middle of the night also changes things, and that's where the hours come in. So, yeah, I think this will be a nuanced conversation for sure.
Mm-hmm. But yes, I am expecting if we do have a reasonable turnout, people will be getting up and saying, I think that, I do a lot of home hobby work. I need to be able to make my loud noises Friday evening and Saturday evening until 9 p.m. because it's the weekend. When else am I going to do it? Or someone may say, Sunday mornings, I don't want to be woken up at 7 a.m. I'd like to push no loud noises until 9 a.m. That's the kind of input that what do the people in town feel about this? Okay, so I've taken some notes for follow-up before the meeting in 2 weeks.
Can I ask what this is going to do to the drive-in?
Um,
Because I can hear it from my house. I'm sure Joanne can hear it from hers.
this
Oh,
is
I can hear everything from the drive-in to the end zone at my house.
Right.
okay.
Okay. So they're obviously over the decibel, right?
No,
Yeah,
not
I think this is a
necessarily.
good. Well, they might not necessarily be over that, especially at that distance. Like the sound pressure at the distance, even if you can still hear it, will still be low. But I think there is something to be said about existing permits that are already in place to operate. And if they're operating at unhealthy noise levels under a standard permit, like we should know that before we
Right.
go forward.
Well, my
Come to my
question for
house on a Saturday evening in the summertime at 2 a.m. and you will hear the end zone.
why is the drive-in broadcasting on speakers instead of people, picking it up on
Well, it's the
Bluetooth in
people.
their car?
It's the people, right? Like and they also have that beer garden, right, with the speakers in it, and sometimes they have concerts and stuff. So
When they have a Taylor Swift concert, I can hear it up here.
I mean, any place where lots of people congregate at once will create some kind of ambient noise, you know. But they also have the speakers where they,
Okay.
you know, talk about the movies and like they, you know, between the movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is something that I wouldn't want this law essentially used against our local businesses. So we need to
Correct. That's right.
ensure that there is some accommodation. And if they're at an unhealthy level, then we should be talking to them about that in advance of
Okay,
the
well,
noise bylaw.
the two that I can know of that are at risk are the Van de Valk Winery, because they always have people complaining, and they're a farm and farming residential, but the drive-in's on Route 16 commercial, so that would be somewhat different. Okay,
I think we need to know this before the meeting so we know what to expect.
so when does the drive-in start doing things
When
again?
the snow melts. I don't
Okay.
think you need to know all these answers. I think you can still take public comment and say that you don't have these answers.
Okay.
That's fair. You're never going to know everything. But knowing this in advance means that you can essentially ask the select board's admin, who doesn't exist right now, to review current permits and, you know, talk with the building commission and the health agent about what they might see the perceived impact of, you know, this law on these, you know, on all the businesses in town. Like they're the ones that we know, but you know, what if a business is putting in a new parking lot and they start at 5 a.m. one morning and they're very loud? Are we going to go stop that from happening? Or will we accommodate that inside the permit that they got to put the parking lot in the first place? Those are questions that we need to sort of answer logistically from a business perspective of the town. But you don't need to know those answers to get feedback on how people want this particular law to operate within
Right.
the town.
So what I can tell people in 2 weeks is we're collecting feedback now. When we decide on what language we're using, we will talk with the management of the drive-in, maybe have someone go with the sound meter and see what their noise levels are at various distances from the speakers. And then at town meeting, we'd be able to say whether this would impact the drive-in or not. If it would be impacting the drive-in, I'd want to have someone from the drive-in present to say, and they're on board with it. Or they would be changing the way that they make the Soundgarden speakers so that they would, oh, it's 9 a.m., it's 9 p.m., time to turn the volume down on the Soundgarden speakers.
Yeah,
If
those are all
good. Those are
examples.
all things that we can investigate in the next 2 months before ATM.
Yeah, having someone go out and say like the ambient noise at, you know, North and 16 is the ambient noise at, you know, the Maple intersection is, like, just move around town at a couple of times during the night and day and get those ambient sound readings to just show people the example of where we're starting from, the baseline. And then, you know, a car with loud music comes by, the baseline's 50 decibels. Now all of a sudden it's at 80 decibels. The difference is 30 decibels. That's 15 decibels over, you know, what we would like.
Okay, so that is something where, Jason, I may need you to help me get Colleen and Chief Kersey's attention to have them do that kind of upfront work in the month before
let me write
ATM.
myself a note and I'll send them an email.
Well, copy me on that as well. And
No, I will. I mean, I'm not going to do it this second, but it'll happen in the next week here.
I'll send out the minutes from this meeting, and then I will have that listed as an action item for you, and then you can take that and modify the language in what you're doing. So I'll think about and put in writing what I'm thinking that we want them to do, and then you can translate that into executive talking to people who work for executive language.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, any other comments on the first draft,
I guess
the
like,
text and language? Tom, did you say something?
yeah, I just, my only, like, we talked about existing permits, right? Like, I guess,
And there's the accommodation for like the one-time permits, like rock the block or stuff like
right.
that. And then anything else, new stuff is all going to be up to internal procedure to ensure that we follow the bylaw by ensuring internal procedure supports that bylaw, right?
Like,
So there's going to have to be administrative stuff.
like, let's say a bowling alley moves into the plaza, right? Like,
Yeah.
how would, like, I guess, like, would they try to claim like a permanent exemption or something? Like, how would,
Well, why would a bowling alley be a noise nuisance? Because they have a lot of customers, or
I don't know. I'm just trying to think, like,
Okay, here's my stab at it. Assuming that they move into town after they the noise bylaw comes into effect, they're going to need to get a permit, maybe from the planning board, maybe from the select board, or some kind of business permit. And in the town internal documentation, one of the things that a new business will have to do is we'll tell them, oh, by the way, Mendon has a noise bylaw, and this restricts the types of noise that you're making. So the bowling alley would have a chance before they opened to make sure that they were within the noise bylaw. And if they weren't, then we'd send someone out with a noise meter and let them know.
yeah, it would be a lot like how the health agent checks up on compliance for food safety. You would set a standard. We could measure ambient noise as part of the permit, but they would be a resident of the town or a business in the town, just like any other resident. They would just follow those rules. I don't really see, unless they come in and they're like a manufacturing facility or like a new place bringing dump trucks in and out or something that's just very loud. That then I could see we would have to have that come through as maybe part of the business permitting process. But also, there's room there for the select board to just change the rules and say, like, we give a permanent exemption based on this.
Well, if you want
that
that, I need to put it in the bylaw because that's not in there right now. Right now, the
Yeah,
language says you're only doing it for a one-time exemption.
one
Most
time could be a
towns,
whole year, though, Carl. This interpretation.
uh,
I think
yeah,
there
and the
needs
town
to be an
council may have
exemption
words about that.
process. I do think there needs to be an exemption process based on all the things that we're talking about right now. I don't know that needs to be the select board's decision, but maybe the planning board. But there should be an exemption process for time. Like some business wants to start a half hour earlier every day, and we see that as not a nuisance because there's not a lot of people around, or something like that, where just the noise doesn't actually impact anybody because they're in the middle of the woods or the farm or whatever, and they don't want an unruly neighbor calling them, calling the police on them. Or yeah, I could just think of these so outside of all the exemptions that we listed, there might be a reason a business, like there's a mechanic shop in the residential area on Blackstone Street that is grandfathered in, to run that business there. They make noise. you know, Maybe they need to be grandfathered. And these are the things that you guys are making me think about. And so, that being said, we won't know all those in advance. So if the law
And
doesn't allow us to make an exemption,
well,
it
and
would
then
be
the question
difficult.
is the guy on that shop making loud noises before 8 a.m.?
Yeah, I
And
don't
then
really
this
know.
noise bylaw would say, no, you're not allowed to do that anymore. Because that's exactly what the citizens of the complaints I've been hearing for four
Right.
years is they don't want people making loud noises that early in the morning or
That's
that
a very
late at
good
night.
point. I
So
can
the
see
whole
this from
point,
both sides. Yeah.
the whole point of the noise bylaw is so that going back to the top section, controlling excessive noise says that the public is able to enjoy an environment, rural
Yeah.
character of the
Well,
town.
now you know what your public meeting is going to sound like. It's going to sound like me, because I'm going to go all over the place as a public person and say, well,
Yes.
what if that? What if this?
And
But you're right. The point is we're trying to imply a law in general based on feedback from the community.
and what I've heard from contractors is they shrug and say, we'll do whatever the town bylaw does. Uh, we heard at the meeting last year that Wellesley doesn't let people do anything on Sundays and holidays. They showed up for a Monday holiday and were told they had to go home. And okay, great. They just passed the cost along to the schedule delay to their
All right. Well,
customers.
then scratch my opinion that we need an exemption because you're right. If this is a law of the people, then the select board should not override the people. And I don't want to write that into the law
My
for future
my
select boards.
my preference would be that the business or the homeowner work with the Board of Health to
To
mitigate the
mitigate,
impact.
yeah. Okay.
The,
Right, like sound barriers and things of the sort.
there was the case of somebody who was running a gym and the loud noises when people went into self-service exercising at 10 at night. That's a question where you would go and say, we now have a noise bylaw. You have to come up with some way to not make loud noise at 10 p.m. Maybe you give out free headphones.
Well, how is this going to work on the park with the courts being lit at night in the summertime?
I mean, what time are they lit till?
I don't know, but that's the whole thing. You need to find out because if they're lit till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, people can go up there and do tennis, basketball, and with this ordinance, and you won't be able to do that.
Well, it depends on how loud they are.
Jason, if you had teenage boys,
I have two teenage boys. Well, one's 21 now, but yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, like, the problem with this is that they're only going to be really loud if you're right next to them. If you're far away, the relative noise is going to be
right.
annoying, but it's
I'm
not going
just
to be
thinking about
noise ordinance loud.
yeah, I'm just thinking about the houses that are across the street, that'll give or that are around next to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's
And
something that we should test out. We should just go over there and start yelling and have Dan hold the meter and see
well,
what it sounds like.
this is the two comments. First, Chief Kersey said that a lot of people, regardless of what we pass, it's quite likely that an officer is going to go out with the noise meter and say, sorry, that noise is within, that they're allowed to make that amount of noise. And the second one, if there's a bunch of teenagers making a lot of noise, this is why Chief Kersey specifically wants to have the ability to have a verbal warning for the first offense. So the way this would work is the police officer would show up at 9:30 p.m. and say, you're making too much noise, cool it. And then if he has to come back an hour later, then he has the ability to get the teenage boy's attention without having to arrest them.
But I'm looking at it from a parent's perspective, saying you are lighting those basketball and tennis courts till 10 o'clock at night. You're encouraging the kids to be able to go up there and use them as a function. And then you're going to turn around and do this.
As a parent, can you ask your kid to be a little
How
quieter and
when they're
respectful of the
playing
people across the
basketball or they're
street?
having tennis and they're having a good time, the town is encouraging kids to do fun activities that are healthy, non-troublesome, and then to do this would be a problem.
Okay.
I agree with that. I think there needs to be some sort of kind of fine line to these that, I'd be interested in knowing like kind of what other towns that have similar like late night activities like this would do, because we're not the only town that has late night court, like outdoor basketball courts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know Uxbridge has a skate park that they light up all night long. It stays on all night because they get a discount on their electrical rate. I don't know what they do, but I don't even know if they have a noise ordinance or not, but
Yeah, that's in the middle of a residential area. My sons have used that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think this is an easy thing that you can throw in an email at Chief and at and say like, hey guys, first of all, how late is the park open during the summer? The lights open during the summer, and what effect has that had on calls to the police for noise? Because we're considering what the effect of this noise ordinance is on recreation for kids, and just see what they say. Like this is just sort of a simple, what's your opinion? And from there, if the opinion doesn't match your opinion, you can go and figure out what to add or remove.
Well, one way to look at it is to check with Dan Byer. How late are the lights going to be on? Are they on till 10 p.m.? Great. Okay, so the noise ordinance threshold is not 9 p.m., it's 10 p.m. So that at 10 p.m., that's when the kids know that, okay, it's time to cool it with the noise.
Well, it
Because the
might
lights
also
are
be
going out.
seasonal, right? Because like 10 p.m. is different in the summer than it is in the winter.
Yes,
Just
Yeah.
like
but
bottom line.
unfortunately, no bylaw, I went looking, there is no other
No.
town that does anything at all talking about seasonal. And I believe it's because it's too subjective. Um, even if you
Snow on the
use
ground, no
language,
basketball
no, even if you use language like 1 hour after civil dusk, that still requires the the enforcement officer to be able to look up what that means, and it is not clear to the people making the noise. So I believe that's why nobody goes that way and everybody has specific hours.
Can't just go by astronomical sunset or something, because that's pretty clear on every weather app.
But the point is that it would have to be looked up at the time by the enforcement officer, and there's not an expectation that the person who's making the noise, well, it's September, it's November. I made the same noise at the same time last week. You're saying it's illegal to make the noise this week when it wasn't last week, and the response is, well, yeah, because that's the
Daylight
way,
savings time stinks. Yeah.
or because there's
Because there's
one week later you're 30 minutes off on in terms of dusk happening. So I believe that's why nobody goes that
Okay.
route.
I checked with Dan. The lights are on till 10,
Hmm.
and for special events, 10:30.
And like
So
they have
for
concerts
special
there
events,
too,
we
so-
would have given them a waiver for
permit.
that.
Okay. I guess I'm just
It's a good point though. Like, yeah, like 10 p.m. If the town is keeping rec open till 10 p.m., the noise ordinance can't really start till 10 p.m. And we're leaving that open just for all the reasons that were said earlier, right? Like kids need a place to go. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
The other thing that we could do is some towns allow different noises for different types of zoning. So for zoning along Route 16, they have different restrictions than in residential areas, different restrictions in the town-owned.
Right. I remember you shared that like really complex table, right? But that's what we get into is then what's the expectation for people to know like what noise zone they're in?
Yep.
It just gets really hard.
And if you're living in Arlington or Boston or Worcester, it makes a big deal. But out here in a rural community, we don't. It would be difficult to have that level of specificity because people aren't used to it.
Yeah, there's no perfect implementation here, but it's really about what this all comes down to is that the problem statement is that the police need other tools other than arrests. And this is the tooling we have at our, our favor to deploy to help support that.
Well, they're two different departments. The police need the ability to do something at night. The code enforcement officer needs the ability to do something at 6 a.m. and respond to people doing on commercial work. Because right now, Colleen and her team only respond to a very specific set of circumstances relating to the state code. This gives them another tool they can use that gives them a ticket instead of instead of the other approach. So this is good practice. I'm having lots of ideas for how things might be run in 2 weeks. And what might be helpful if other people besides me are able to come back with these arguments so that I as moderator don't have to be playing a game of yes but where someone says blah 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 and I say yes but explanation. If other people are able to do this.
Yeah.
Either that or Tom chairs the meeting, I give the slideshow, and then Tom takes questions and then looks to me for answers. We can
I think that's
think
probably
about
the
doing.
best way. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay. Are you going to? So you're expecting to be? You're expecting to be able to get to town hall at 6 p.m. on that Tuesday?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Okay.
That's the goal.
So
Oh, sorry, I got logged out for a second. But yeah, no, I'll be there on Tuesday at 6.
okay. So anything else on? I think we've talked this out. So anything else on the agenda? Jason, can you say something about the town clerk?
Sure. We talked about at a recent select board meeting about converting the town clerk and the tree warden's position to from elected to appointed. Where we ended up, I'll start with the tree warden first. Where we ended up on the tree warden was it sounded like that was much more. There was much more nuance to that position than just contracting the cutting down trees. There's a relationship there. There's some complexity with like skill set and knowledge. So we sort of tabled that for a moment, but we did talk it out. So I suggest go watching that portion of the meeting if you're interested. Our tree warden was there to talk that out with us. So that was good conversation. And then, all right, so back to the clerk. We are just getting to a sort of a size of a town where having these elected positions puts us at risk long term. And there were a lot of compelling statements. But I think that's sort of the bottom line is that in order to ensure that we have the talent in that job and that we're able to hire somebody who's certified and able to do that job at the sort of scale that our town needs a clerk to run at, that we need to be able to appoint that position and not risk being only able to elect it from our local pool. So I think everybody ended up on the same tone on that. We just want to figure out how to present that at an upcoming town meeting in a way that makes sense to the constituents of the town, the same way it did for the highway surveyor position.
And we also need to undo the existing town bylaw that says you can't convert within a year. That
Right,
was
and that's
adopted in 2000 because of some person who did something that people didn't like. And we want to
right.
make it clear, no, 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 we're doing it for good this time.
Right. We want to make sure that's a one-way street, basically, of a bylaw. So that will need to be changed in order to accommodate this.
Would the idea be that the select board appoints the town clerk?
That
Yes.
would be the idea, yeah.
Because I personally, I have, because, you know, the town clerk running elections, I know some towns, like, it's kind of like a ad hoc committee that's put together from the select board as well as some other bodies. I guess it's like, with the town clerk running elections, I think there needs to be some sort of,
Are you worried about the power of the select board over the town clerk?
I am.
That was addressed, I think you said the Collins Foundation or someone else had looked
That
into
was
that.
addressed a couple of different ways. And the bottom line on that was that elections are mandated and directed by the state, and the select board has no purview into or over them whatsoever. The only thing we can do is allocate resources to support elections, but we can't change how they operate. So that was the clerk had stated that would never be in the purview of the select board, regardless of who she reported to, because the laws say so. Laws that we can't change.
And anyone we appointed as town clerk would be well aware of their rights and abilities and know when to tell the select board to stuff it.
Yeah, and I think that, Tom, like, that protection, even if it weren't needed, could be, you know, maybe it's not needed now, but could be written directly into the bylaw. I mean, I'm not opposed to any of that. We're trying really hard to set up future select boards for success, and plugging those types of executive style holes are things that we're interested in. So.
Fair enough.
That was my first thought, and then I heard all of the responses to that. So yeah.
Yeah, apparently somebody has well thought this out from a legal perspective, and I'm not a lawyer, but that's how it was explained to me.
And we do have time because Ellen's current term is not up this year. The goal would be to get something done in time so that there was not another election for town clerk. Instead, there would be a conversion.
Right, which I believe would be ATM next year, would be the sort of aim for us. And I think a year to get through all the legalese and to check in with the state and all that kind of stuff it should be plenty of time.
So who's driving the bus? Is this something that I believe Jeremy's going to put it on his plate to maneuver stuff, and will be acting as an advisory? Yeah,
we need to get past current town meeting, and you know, the biggest thing with the current town meeting is not going to be the bylaw, the noise bylaw. It's going to most likely be the whatever happens with the school budget. So, you know, these types of big changes we can save for another time.
Yeah.
But
there's going to be an interesting ATM because they are going to come in for looking for a 2.5 override, and that always fills the room.
Right. So this will be a different type of town meeting, right? And we're already talking about how to accommodate that. And I don't have any more detail than that, so sorry.
Nope. Well, the town moderator will probably get involved in that kind of planning.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, thank you, Jason.
No
Any other
problem.
questions? I don't have any. Okay, I don't see any, so I'm gonna move on. If we want, what was that?
Just,
Someone just say something?
Joanne just muted herself, so there's something going
Oh.
on in her.
Got it. Okay.
Like Santa Clara. No, it's not a bad back, and they want.
So, moving on, I think we want to discuss like our finalized list of bylaws we want to submit for town meeting. I know the noise bylaw is on there. I know the land use committee bylaw is on there. Are there any others that we feel are ready to present to the select board for changes?
What we heard from Terrence Schofield is that they don't seem to have anything ready. Their big pain point was the demolition one, but they've worked out that with the internal town boards. Council on Aging should be ready to go.
Karen, is that, do we have like a red line list of changes for that?
We have, I met with them today. There's one more change we have to look. It's a minor change. But yes, we will have, I mean, I have it.
Okay,
But like I said, we met again today and we have to change one more minor detail.
okay. So I mean, we
So-
can submit that as a placeholder.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any others.
Nope, the noise one will be a big our big project for this one.
Yep. Yep.
So
The
we will
noise
be
bylaw and the land use and council on aging.
right. The Council on Aging and Land Use, they do their own. We would have the noise bylaw submitted by the select board.
Wait, council on aging. Oh, okay. Council on aging, because they're elected, would do their own. Got it.
It doesn't matter if they're elected or appointed, they're their own board.
Right. But I mean, I think that
You could. So there's no. We had this discussion at the last warrant. You could do your own. It's just that traditionally they've rolled this stuff up to the select board.
Mhm.
And yeah, but what's going to happen is Carl's going to stand up there and talk anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
I'll have to get up from my. I'm going to be sitting on the end of the FinCom table just so I can move around and get to the mic.
what about the town administrator bylaw?
I don't know if that's ready yet.
Okay. So we'll hold off for this. We'll hold off on that one.
And we haven't even seen a draft yet, so
Right.
Well,
if,
right.
if
So we
Jeremy
talked
wants to
about
pull
it
the
at
trick,
length,
if
but,
Jeremy
yeah,
wants to get that done, he's gonna he would end up working on that.
So, so those basically really the only thing we're submitting to the select board is the noise bylaw.
Yep, and we might have some new stuff, a new big one coming for you too. I'll just keep you in suspense there because I have to talk to some people. But we've got another one coming down the line for maybe special town meeting. So I'll talk to you guys about that later if it becomes true.
Mysterious.
It's not a, yeah. Well, I won't even want to get you any hints. But
I'm
stay
dying
tuned.
here.
All right. Well, so I'll submit it in the morning as a placeholder. If there's nothing else, I think we can retire until our next meeting on Tuesday, in Tuesday the 24th.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor, say your name and I.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Joanne Lamoth, aye.
Tom Morelli, aye. All right. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Have a great
Have a
night,
good
everybody.
night.
Or just short of
Night.
2 weeks, I guess.
Yep, 1 day short.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.